There are moments when heaven whispers instead of shouting. And when it does, only those who are attentive receive what changes a lifetime. What I am about to share with you is not a trend, not a superstition, and not a modern technique. It is an ancient spiritual principle, hidden in plain sight for thousands of years, preserved by sages, rabbis, and mystics who understood one truth: names are vessels of power. Before we go any further, I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel Jewish Wisdom. By subscribing, you are not supporting a person. You are supporting the preservation of ancient spiritual teachings that have transformed lives for generations. This channel exists so that sacred wisdom is not lost in noise. Now, pause for a moment, take a breath, and write this simple affirmation in the comments. Ancient wisdom is awakening in me. Do not rush. Writing is an act of agreement. From the beginning of Scripture, creation itself responds to words. In Genesis, the world is not formed by force, but by speech. And God said, and reality aligned. Yet there is a deeper layer many never reach. The Torah teaches that names are not labels. In Hebrew, thought a name reveals essence, assignment, and spiritual function. To know a name is to touch purpose. But not all names are spoken aloud. Some are written. Some are carried. Some are guarded in silence. In ancient Jewish tradition, there were moments when a name was written and kept close to the body, not as magic, but as a reminder of divine alignment, a spiritual anchor. In this first chapter, I will not reveal the name yet. Wisdom unfolds by preparation, not impatience. What I will tell you is this: when a person aligns with the correct spiritual identity, doors begin to open quietly, resistance weakens, confusion dissolves, provision finds pathways it never had before. Mystery is not meant to confuse you. It is meant to prepare you. Because in the next chapter, we will return to the ancient texts, to the Torah, the Psalms, and the hidden language of Kabbalah, and uncover why a single Hebrew name, written and carried with intention, can shape decades of your life. To understand the power of a written Hebrew name, we must return to the beginning, to a time when words were not merely sounds, but substance. In the Hebrew worldview, nothing exists by accident. Everything is connected by meaning, purpose, and consciousness. When the Torah speaks, it does not only describe historical events, it reveals spiritual structures that are still active today. In the book of Genesis, the first creative act is not physical movement, but spoken expression. And God said, is not poetic language, it is theological truth. The universe is born from speech. Reality responds to words. And within this divine language, names occupy a sacred position. In Hebrew, the word Shem, name, is not a label. It is a revelation of essence. A name expresses function, assignment, and spiritual direction. This is why, throughout Scripture, every time a name changes, destiny shifts. Abram does not receive abundance and then become Abraham. His name is expanded first, and only then does fruitfulness follow. Jacob does not win a blessing and later receive a new identity. He wrestles through the night until his inner structure is transformed, and only then is he called Israel. In the Torah, identity always precedes manifestation. The sages of Israel teach that Hebrew letters are living forces. They are not decorative symbols. Each letter carries vibration, numerical value, and divine intention. Kabbalistic tradition explains that the world itself was formed through precise combinations of letters. Creation is not chaos shaped by power, but order shaped by meaning. When letters align, reality aligns. This is why the misuse of words is treated seriously in Jewish thought. Speech can build, but it can also fracture. Words can open channels, or they can block them. And names, being the highest form of concentrated language, carry even greater responsibility. In the Psalms, there is a verse that has been studied quietly for centuries by those who sought more than surface understanding. It says that the one who knows the divine name will be set on high and delivered. The text does not say who pronounces the name, nor who hears the name, but who knows the name. Knowledge, in biblical language, is not intellectual awareness. It is alignment. To know is to live in harmony with what is known. Within Jewish mystical tradition, certain names are associated not with domination or control, but with guardianship, continuity, and preservation. These names are not used to demand outcomes. They are used to anchor the soul. Their purpose is not to force heaven to act, but to remind the human heart that it is not abandoned. This is where the ancient practice of writing a name emerges, not as magic, not as superstition, but as consciousness made tangible. To write a sacred name was to externalize an inner agreement. To carry it was to carry awareness. To keep it hidden was to protect intention from distortion. The Torah itself commands physical reminders. The mezuzah on the doorpost is not worshipped. It reminds the household who governs the space. The tzitzit are not charms. They remind the wearer of covenant and order. In the same way, the written name served as a portable reminder of divine alignment, especially during moments of uncertainty, travel, or transition. Rabbinic writings describe righteous individuals who carried such names quietly, never displaying them, never explaining them, never turning them into spectacle. The power was never in exposure. The power was in constancy. Over time, this awareness shaped decisions, softened reactions, restrained impulsiveness, and cultivated patience. And patience, according to the sages, is one of the highest vessels for blessing. This is why elders would often say that those who carried the name would thank heaven in their later years. Not because life became effortless, but because it became coherent. Storms still came, but they did not destroy identity. Loss still occurred, but it did not erase meaning. Prosperity, when it arrived, did not corrupt purpose. The name worked slowly, quietly, invisibly, the way the deepest forces always do. What Kabbalah teaches is that protection is not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of orientation. When a person knows who stands with them, fear loses its authority. When identity is anchored, confusion cannot dominate. When intention is aligned, time itself begins to cooperate. This is the secret the modern world has forgotten. It looks for instant change and overlooks sustained alignment. It searches for external tools while neglecting internal structure. The Hebrew name was never meant to impress others. It was meant to order the inner world. This ancient principle will be translated into daily life, not theory, not abstraction, but lived practice. Because wisdom that cannot be applied gently becomes knowledge without fruit. And what has been preserved for thousands of years was never meant to remain hidden forever, only to be revealed at the right pace, to the right heart, with the right intention. Ancient wisdom was never meant to remain confined to scrolls, temples, or distant centuries. In Jewish thought, a teaching only becomes wisdom when it is lived. Knowledge that does not transform daily behavior is considered incomplete. This is why the sages were never impressed by how much someone knew, but by how consistently they lived in alignment with what they knew. The purpose of writing a Hebrew name and carrying it close is not mystical theater. It is not an attempt to manipulate heaven. It is a discipline of awareness. A quiet, daily practice that slowly reshapes perception, decision-making, and inner posture. Over time, this subtle shift produces tangible results. Not because reality was forced to change, but because the person changed the way they walked through reality. In practical terms, the ancient masters understood something modern culture often ignores. Most of life is shaped not by dramatic moments, but by repeated small choices. How a person responds when no one is watching, how they speak when tired, how they decide when pressured, how they think when afraid. These moments accumulate, and they determine direction far more than rare turning points. Carrying the written name served as a silent interruption to unconscious living. It was never meant to be touched constantly or displayed. Its presence alone was enough. Knowing it was there created a pause between impulse and action. That pause is where wisdom enters. When anxiety rises, the person remembers alignment instead of reacting blindly. When impatience surfaces, the person remembers continuity instead of forcing outcomes. When temptation appears, the person remembers identity instead of surrendering to momentary relief. Over time, this internal recalibration produces stability. And stability is one of the deepest spiritual forms of protection. Jewish tradition teaches that blessing flows where order exists. Chaos blocks flow. Disorder distorts perception. The written name, carried with intention, acts as an anchor of order within the inner world. It does not remove challenges, but it prevents challenges from defining the soul. This is why the sages warned against turning sacred practices into public displays. The moment something becomes performative, it loses its refining power. What is shown to impress others often fails to transform the self. What is kept with humility works quietly, consistently, and deeply. In daily life, the presence of the name becomes a mirror. It reflects back the question that truly matters. Am I acting in alignment with who I am meant to be? That question alone reshapes behavior. It softens harsh words before they are spoken. It restrains impulsive decisions. It invites patience into moments of frustration. Over time, people who lived with this awareness were described as grounded, not hurried, not desperate, not reactive. Their strength did not come from controlling circumstances, but from governing themselves. And in Jewish wisdom, self-governance is considered a higher form of power than authority over others. There is a reason the Torah places so much emphasis on remembrance. Remember the Sabbath. Remember the covenant. Remember who brought you out. Forgetting leads to disorientation. Remembering restores order. The written name participates in this same spiritual logic. It is not an object of power. It is a reminder of presence. Now, take a moment and write this affirmation in the comments. Slowly and intentionally. I walk under divine alignment. This sentence is not decorative. It is a declaration of orientation. When written with sincerity, it reinforces the inner posture that this ancient practice is meant to cultivate. As days turn into weeks and weeks into months, the effect becomes noticeable. Decisions feel clearer. Emotional reactions lose intensity. The need to prove, rush, or dominate weakens. This is not passivity. It is strength, refined by awareness. Jewish wisdom teaches that time responds differently to those who are aligned. Not because time bends magically, but because aligned people waste less energy fighting reality. They cooperate with seasons instead of resisting them. They plant when it is time to plant. They wait when it is time to wait. And waiting, when done with faith, is not stagnation. It is preparation. This is why the elders associated the practice with long-term gratitude, rather than immediate reward. The phrase "you will thank me for 50 years" was never about literal longevity alone. It was about looking back on life without regret, without bitterness, without the haunting sense of having lived disconnected from purpose. The name shapes how a person enters conversations, handles money, builds relationships, and navigates uncertainty. It does not promise wealth without effort or peace without discipline. It promises coherence. And coherence is rare. When inner life and outer actions move in the same direction, friction decreases. Energy stops leaking through contradiction. Focus sharpens. This is when progress becomes sustainable instead of exhausting. What appears to the outside world as luck is often the invisible result of years of aligned living. What looks like protection is often the fruit of disciplined awareness. What feels like favor is frequently the outcome of quiet faithfulness. This is how ancient wisdom works. Slowly, gently, invisibly, until one day a person realizes that storms came and went, yet they remained standing. Opportunities appeared, and they were ready. Loss occurred, but meaning was not lost. Success arrived, and it did not destroy character. The written name never demanded attention. It simply accompanied the journey. This is the practice as it was lived. Not loudly, not dramatically, but faithfully. And faithfulness, in Jewish understanding, is not emotional intensity. It is consistency over time. When wisdom becomes habit, life becomes anchored. And when life is anchored, even uncertainty loses its power to destabilize the soul. There is a moment in every spiritual journey when knowledge stops being interesting and begins to be necessary. It usually does not come during celebration or abundance, but during silence, loss, or exhaustion. This is the moment when ancient wisdom reveals why it was preserved with such care. Jewish tradition tells stories not to entertain, but to transmit orientation. One such story speaks of a man who lived through decades of uncertainty, migration, scarcity, and rebuilding. He was not famous. He did not leave books behind. His life was quiet, disciplined, and seemingly unremarkable. Yet those who knew him noticed something unusual. He never panicked, even when circumstances demanded fear. When asked how he maintained such steadiness, he did not speak of miracles or visions. He spoke of remembrance. He said that long ago, in his youth, he had learned to carry alignment instead of expectations. He carried a reminder of who walked with him, not a demand for outcomes. Over time, this reminder shaped the way he entered every season of life. This is what the written name represents at its deepest level. It is not a shortcut through difficulty. It is a companion through time. It does not remove pain, but it prevents pain from becoming meaningless. It does not eliminate loss, but it anchors identity so loss does not consume the soul. Human beings are not destroyed by hardship alone. They are destroyed by disorientation. When suffering arrives without meaning, it fractures the inner world. When uncertainty appears without direction, fear multiplies. The ancient wisdom of Israel understood this deeply. That is why remembrance is treated as sacred work. The Torah does not promise a life without struggle. It promises presence within it. The prophets do not deny darkness. They insist that darkness does not have final authority. The Psalms do not ignore fear. They teach how to walk through fear without surrendering identity. This is where the emotional power of the practice reveals itself. Carrying the name becomes a quiet testimony, not to others, but to the self. In moments when the world feels unstable, the name whispers continuity. In moments when the future feels uncertain, the name reminds the heart that history did not begin with this moment and will not end with it. Many people live as if every crisis is the final chapter. Ancient wisdom teaches otherwise. It teaches that life unfolds in movements, not conclusions. The written name anchors the soul in this long view. It trains the heart to see beyond immediate pressure and to act with patience when impatience feels justified. There is a profound psychological and spiritual transformation that occurs when a person stops demanding instant resolution and begins cultivating long-term alignment. Anxiety loosens its grip. Comparación loses relevance. The need to prove diminishes. What replaces it is a grounded presence that others can feel, even if they cannot explain it. This is why those who lived this practice were often described as having peace without passivity. They were not disengaged from life. They were deeply involved, but not enslaved by outcomes. They worked, planned, struggled, and rebuilt, yet their inner posture remained stable. This stability becomes a form of testimony. Children feel it. Relationships respond to it. Decisions become clearer because they are no longer driven by fear of loss or hunger for approval. When alignment governs the inner world, action becomes cleaner and more intentional. If this message resonates with you, take a moment now and respond in the comments with this sentence: I choose alignment over fear. Writing this is not symbolic. It is an internal commitment. Every meaningful spiritual shift begins with choice. The reason elders spoke of gratitude decades later is because alignment reveals its value over time. Many things feel powerful in the moment and leave nothing behind. This practice feels quiet at first and leaves a legacy within the soul. Years later, when a person looks back and realizes they did not abandon themselves during hardship, that is when gratitude emerges. Jewish wisdom does not measure success by speed. It measures it by faithfulness. A fast life that collapses is not considered successful. A steady life that endures is. This is why the teachings of Torah and Kabbalah always return to the inner life. Empires rise and fall. Markets fluctuate. Bodies age. But alignment sustains meaning across every season. If you feel drawn to explore this wisdom more deeply, to understand how ancient Jewish teachings apply to modern life, with clarity and balance, there is a resource created specifically for this purpose. The Jewish Wisdom eBook was developed to guide seekers who sense that there is more beneath the surface of faith, language, and daily practice. If you want to go deeper into these teachings, ask for the Jewish Wisdom eBook in the comments. And let this final seal remain with you. Those who walk with remembrance do not rush, do not break, and do not lose themselves in the noise of the moment. They move through time with quiet strength, guided not by fear, but by alignment that endures. Every ancient teaching reaches a moment where it stops asking to be understood and begins asking to be lived. This is that moment. Not because something new must be added, but because what has already been revealed needs to settle into the soul. Wisdom does not rush to conclude. It allows space for integration. Jewish tradition teaches that true transformation does not announce itself loudly. It unfolds quietly, almost unnoticed, until one day the person realizes they are no longer who they once were. Their reactions have changed. Their inner dialogue has softened. Their sense of direction feels clearer, steadier, less reactive to the noise of the world. This is the final work of alignment. The written name, carried with intention, was never meant to dominate attention. Its power lies precisely in its humility. It does not compete with daily life. It accompanies it. It does not interrupt responsibilities. It orders them. Over time, it becomes part of the inner landscape, shaping how a person experiences success, loss, waiting, and transition. What ancient Jewish wisdom understood, and what modern life often forgets, is that continuity is more valuable than intensity. A moment of inspiration can lift the spirit, but only sustained alignment can carry a person across decades. This is why the elders spoke less about dramatic breakthroughs and more about remaining faithful to orientation. When a person lives without alignment, even good things eventually feel heavy. Success becomes stressful. Relationships become fragile. Time feels like pressure instead of process. But when alignment is present, even difficulty carries meaning. Even waiting has purpose. Even silence speaks. This is not mysticism detached from reality. It is wisdom tested by generations who lived through exile, rebuilding, uncertainty, and renewal. They learned that identity must be anchored deeper than circumstance, or it will collapse when circumstances shift. The Hebrew name was one such anchor, not because it controlled the future, but because it stabilized the present. And when the present is stable, the future becomes navigable. As this teaching comes to rest within you, notice what it invites rather than what it promises. It does not promise a life without storms. It invites a life that is not uprooted by them. It does not promise immediate reward. It invites long-term coherence. It does not promise certainty. It invites trust shaped by remembrance. Many people ask for signs before committing to alignment. Ancient wisdom reverses the order. It teaches that alignment itself becomes the sign. Over time, the evidence appears not as spectacle, but as resilience, clarity, and quiet confidence. If this message has stirred something within you, it is not by accident. Jewish thought teaches that resonance is a form of calling. When a teaching feels familiar before it is fully understood, it often means the soul recognizes what the mind is still learning. There are layers to this wisdom that cannot be fully transmitted in a single teaching. Context matters. Foundations matter. Understanding how these principles interweave with daily decisions, relationships, work, and inner discipline requires careful guidance. That is why the Jewish Wisdom eBook exists. It was created as a companion for those who feel drawn to explore these teachings beyond a single moment of inspiration. It expands on the principles of alignment, remembrance, language, and spiritual order found in Jewish tradition, offering depth without excess and clarity without simplification. If you feel genuine interest in going deeper, ask for the Jewish Wisdom eBook in the comments. This invitation is not for everyone. It is for those who sense that ancient wisdom still has a role to play in shaping modern life. As we close this teaching, carry this final reflection with you. A life aligned does not rush to arrive. It learns how to walk. And those who learn how to walk with remembrance discover that time itself becomes an ally, not an enemy. May what you carry shape not only your days, but your years.